00. Early morning regional command zones. The first signs of something unusual did not come from explosions. They came from silence. Communication channels associated with several US-backed units in the region went quiet almost simultaneously. No distress calls, no emergency broadcasts, just an abrupt drop in activity. At this stage, no one knew what had happened, only that something had. T0300. Initial sensor flags. Within 3 minutes, regional monitoring networks registered multiple anomalies, sudden heat signatures, short-duration radar spikes, rapid changes in airspace activity. None of it confirmed an attack, but all of it suggested coordinated military action. Unverified, early assessment. Unverified OSINT sources later suggested the activity was consistent with precision strike patterns, possibly involving standoff munitions. This has not been officially confirmed. At this point, analysts labeled it a developing event. T06 Azuru. Russian channels activate. 6 minutes in, Russian state-linked military channels began posting cryptic updates. No details, no locations, just claims of a successful engagement. The wording was careful, deliberate. T0800. First claim drops. At the 8-minute mark, the first numerical claim appeared. Hundreds neutralized. No names, no verification, no independent confirmation, just a number, large enough to shock, vague enough to defend. Unverified. Casualty claim. Russia's claim of hundreds killed remains unverified. No independent body confirmed the figures at the time of reporting, but the claim alone changed everything. T10 o'clock. Information. Warfare begins. Within minutes, the claim spread. Social platforms, Telegram channels, regional outlets, some amplified it, some questioned it, some flatly rejected it, but the narrative was now live, and in modern warfare, narrative moves faster than missiles. T1300. US-backed units react. 13 minutes after the initial claim, movement was detected. Surviving elements of US-backed forces reportedly began dispersing, abandoning fixed positions. This matters. Fixed positions suggest confidence. Dispersal suggests expectation of follow-up strikes. Unverified unit movements. Unverified reports indicate rapid repositioning by US-backed units following the strike claims. Official confirmation has not been released, but the timing was telling. T1700. Airspace shifts. 17 minutes in, airspace activity changed. Flights diverted. Military corridors adjusted. Surveillance patterns intensified. No public explanation was given. None was needed. This was containment mode. T20 minutes. Russian military statement. At 20 minutes, a more formal Russian statement appeared. Still no specifics, but the language hardened. Decisive strike. Foreign-backed elements. Mission objectives achieved. The message was not tactical. It was strategic. Why timing mattered here. Releasing casualty numbers before details is intentional. It forces the opponent to react defensively, deny numbers, verify losses, control morale. By the time facts emerge, the psychological impact is already done. T25 minutes after the claim, there was no US response. That silence was deliberate. Immediate denial risks contradiction. Immediate confirmation risks escalation. So commanders waited and watched. T28 minutes. Regional allies take notice. By the 28-minute mark, Allied monitoring agencies were fully engaged. Data sharing intensified. Satellite tasking shifted. Signals intelligence surged. This was no longer a local issue. T32:00. Second claim emerges. A second wave of Russian-linked reporting suggested multiple strike waves, precision-guided munitions, command node disruption, still unverified, but the picture being painted was clear. This wasn't random fire. It was planned, unverified, strike composition. Claims regarding the number of strikes and munitions used remain unconfirmed. Analysts caution against accepting early figures at face value. T35 minutes, the morale effect. At 35 minutes, morale became the real battlefield. Reports surfaced of units pulling back, communications discipline breaking down, conflicting casualty estimates even without confirmation. Uncertainty spread, and uncertainty kills cohesion. T40 minutes in, international media picked up the story. Headlines varied. Russia claims major strike. Unverified casualty numbers released. Washington yet to respond. The lack of clarity fueled speculation, which was exactly the point. T45:00. US command decision window. At this stage, US leadership faced a dilemma: respond publicly and risk validating Russian claims, stay silent and allow the narrative to harden. Neither option was clean. T48 minutes in, something subtle happened. Military movements increased, quietly. No announcements, movements, no alerts, just repositioning. That was the first sign that this incident would not end with words. Unverified posture adjustment. Unverified OSINT suggests US forces may have adjusted regional posture following the claims. This remains speculative, but patterns don't lie. T52:00. Why the number hundreds mattered. Hundreds is not chosen randomly. It's large enough to signal dominance, shake confidence, force investigation, but vague enough to avoid immediate falsification. It's the perfect psychological weapon. 56 minutes, the waiting game. By now, nearly an hour had passed. Still no confirmation, still no denial, just mounting pressure. And everyone involved knew one thing: the next move would define the narrative. T60 minutes, the turning point. Exactly 1 hour after the first claim, US military activity crossed a visible threshold. Not offensively, but decisively. Something was about to change, because what happened next was not a statement, not a denial, and not a counterclaim. It was an action, one that signaled the US was done waiting. T60 minutes, the shift from silence to signal. Exactly 1 hour after Russia's initial claim, something changed, not in headlines, but in patterns. Airspace usage tightened, logistics routes adjusted, data traffic surged. There was still no public US statement, but the posture said everything. This was no longer a wait-and-see moment, it was a manage the aftermath phase. T62 minutes, the first measured response. At 62 minutes, regional coordination intensified, not mobilization, not retaliation, synchronization. Multiple Allied command nodes began exchanging time-stamped data packets, imagery, signals, movement logs, seeking one answer: were the Russian numbers real? Unverified. Data triangulation. Unverified OSINT suggests Allied analysts began cross-checking satellite passes, thermal anomalies, and communications gaps to estimate casualties. No official figures were released at this stage. The goal wasn't to confirm Russia's claim, it was to understand what actually happened. T65:00. Why verification takes time. Casualty verification in active conflict zones is slow by design. Why? Because initial reports are chaotic, units fragment after strikes, communication breaks are common, numbers are easily inflated, speed favors propaganda, accuracy favors patience. T68:00. Russia doubles down. Just over an hour in, Russian messaging escalated. Still vague, still number heavy. Phrases like foreign supported formations, command infrastructure destroyed, objectives exceeded, no maps, no images, no evidence. The numbers stood alone. Unverified. Claim amplification. The repetition of casualty figures without supporting detail suggests an information-dominant strategy rather than battlefield transparency. This interpretation remains analytical, not confirmed. T72:00. US internal decision point. Inside US command circles, the debate sharpened. 3 paths emerged: immediate rebuttal, risk being contradicted later, delayed clarification, cede early narrative space, operational signaling, let actions speak first. They chose the third. T75 minutes, operational signaling begins. At 75 minutes, indicators became visible, not offensively, defensively, but assertively. Increased ISR, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, coverage, hardened logistics routes, reinforced command and control nodes. The message wasn't retaliation, it was resilience. Unverified. ISR expansion. Unverified reports indicate expanded aerial and satellite surveillance over the affected region. No official confirmation was provided. T80:00. The psychological counter. Information warfare isn't just about numbers, it's about confidence. At 80 minutes, subtle signals began circulating. Allied officials emphasizing ongoing assessments. Analysts highlighting lack of independent verification. Media using conditional language. This wasn't denial, it was dilution. T85:00. Why ongoing assessment matters. That phrase buys time. It tells allies, we're not panicking. It tells adversaries, we're not convinced. And it tells the public, don't rush to conclusions. Narratives thrive on certainty. Assessments undermine it. T90:00. The second hour ends. 2 hours after the claim, the battlefield was quiet, but the information space was roaring. Commentators speculated, maps circulated, numbers multiplied, still no confirmation, still no denial, just pressure. T95:00. Behind the scenes, damage assessment. This is when reality starts to intrude. Field commanders report missing personnel, damaged equipment, disrupted units. But missing does not mean killed. In conflict zones, units scatter, radios fail, reports lag. This is why early casualty numbers are notoriously unreliable. Unverified field reports. Unverified OSINT suggests preliminary reports showed disruption rather than total destruction. These early indicators were incomplete. T 75 minutes. Operational signaling begins. At 75 minutes, indicators became visible, not offensively, defensively, but assertively. Increased ISR, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, coverage, hardened logistics routes, reinforced command and control nodes. The message wasn't retaliation, it was resilience. Unverified, ISR expansion. Unverified reports indicate expanded aerial and satellite surveillance over the affected region. No official confirmation was provided. T80:00, the psychological counter. Information warfare isn't just about numbers, it's about confidence. At 80 minutes, subtle signals began circulating, Allied officials emphasizing ongoing assessments, analysts highlighting lack of independent verification, media using conditional language. This wasn't denial, it was dilution. T85:00, why ongoing assessment matters. That phrase buys time. It tells allies, we're not panicking. It tells adversaries, we're not convinced. And it tells the public, don't rush to conclusions. Narratives thrive on certainty. Assessments undermine it. T90:00, the second hour ends. 2 hours after the claim, the battlefield was quiet, but the information space was roaring. Commentators speculated, maps circulated, numbers multiplied, still no confirmation, still no denial, just pressure. T95:00, behind the scenes, damage assessment. This is when reality starts to intrude. Field commanders report missing personnel, damaged equipment, disrupted units. But missing does not mean killed. In conflict zones, units scatter, radios fail, reports lag. This is why early casualty numbers are notoriously unreliable. Unverified field reports. Unverified OSINT suggests preliminary reports showed disruption rather than total destruction. These early indicators were incomplete. T+100 minutes, Russia's narrative lock-in. At 100 minutes, Russian messaging shifted tone. Less numerical, more declarative. The story was set. Changing it later wouldn't matter, because first impressions last. This is classic narrative lock-in. T+105 minutes, allies step into view. Now, Allied voices appeared, not to contradict Russia directly, but to ask questions. Questions destabilize certainty. What evidence supports these figures? Which units were involved? Who verified the numbers? Each question weakened the claim's foundation. T110:00, why no one wanted to say false, yet calling a claim false requires proof. Without proof, denial looks defensive. So the smarter move was skepticism without confrontation. Let the claim carry its own weight, or collapse under scrutiny. T115:00, operational adjustments continue. As the information battle raged, operations continued quietly. Supply routes were rerouted, units reconsolidated, command structures adapted. This mattered more than headlines, because wars are won by logistics, not tweets. Unverified force adaptation. Unverified assessments suggest US-backed forces adjusted deployment patterns following the incident. Details remain unclear. T120:00, 2 hours in, the strategic balance at the 2-hour mark, something became clear. Russia had achieved information shock, but not strategic breakthrough. No territory changed hands, no alliances shifted, no red lines were crossed. The number was loud, the consequences were not. Yet, T130:00, the counter-narrative emerges. Gradually, a different story took shape, not one of denial, but of context. Claims remain unverified, independent confirmation lacking, assessments ongoing. This language spread, and with it, doubt. T+140:00, why doubt is deadly to propaganda. Propaganda needs belief. Doubt fractures belief. Once fractured, numbers lose power. Hundreds becomes alleged, claimed, unconfirmed. Each qualifier drains impact. T150:00, the quiet countermove. Then came the move few noticed, a shift in presence. Additional Allied assets appeared, not aggressively, but observably. More patrols, more visibility, more stability. This wasn't escalation, it was reassurance. Unverified presence operations. Unverified OSINT indicates increased Allied visibility in adjacent areas. No formal announcement accompanied the change. T+160:00, Russia's dilemma. Now Russia faced a choice: double down, risking exposure, or move on, locking the narrative but avoiding scrutiny. They chose silence. T plus 170:00. Silence speaks. The casualty numbers stop. No updates, no evidence release, no detailed briefings. Silence doesn't confirm falsehood, but it weakens confidence. What really happened? Russia launched a strike. Real. Russia claimed massive casualties. Unverified. The US refused to react emotionally, and in doing so, denied Russia its ultimate objective, forcing a panicked response. Why this matters for the future? This incident sets a precedent. Future conflicts will feature early exaggerated claims, rapid information warfare, delayed verification. The winner will be the side that controls tempo, not volume. Time exposed uncertainty. Time weakened exaggeration. Time favored restraint. And in modern warfare, restraint can be decisive.